As we reported earlier, social media giants, the big tech companies, have been criticised by a committee of MPs for doing nowhere near enough to tackle online hate crime and at times terrorist propaganda too. Let's turn to the feminist and comedian Kate Smurthwaite, who says she gets internet abuse on an industrial scale, receiving things like rape and death threats on practically a daily basis. Kate, very good afternoon to you.
Thank you.
How true is that? I mean, what's it
yes,
like?
Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, it's difficult to say how often I get rape and death threats because I obviously don't spend all day, every day, watching and monitoring for them. But yeah, at least once a day, without a doubt, for sure.
What do you do? What do you do when you get them?
The answer is almost nothing. I mean, I have reported to the police, and they sort of, But what are the police going to do when we look at the account that sent it and discover that it's based in Saudi Arabia or somewhere in the US or South America? It's not as simple as kind of, well, every time this happens. And also, I mean, have I got time to go into the police every single day? Of course not. Sometimes I do report things to the police when it seems like there's an imminent threat, when it seems like, for example, they're naming where they're going to try and track me down or something like this, or they've revealed a part of my address. Something like that can be very scary. But I have to say, and this might sound strange, but when it happens to you all the time, you get a bit used to it.
You get
almost inured to it, which doesn't make it okay. But yeah.
What would you say to those people who, and they will be out there, who will say, just don't log on, Kate?
Well, that's a wonderful idea if we were talking sort of 50 years ago when being online was kind of optional. But the fact is, as a performer, it's not optional for me to be online. I need a social media presence. That's how word gets out about my work and my shows. That's where I share my videos that I make. And even from a sort of social point of view, that's where a lot of our social lives happen these days. They're called social media for a reason. That's a little bit like saying, well, you've been threatened in, North London. Don't go to North London. I think that's a big restriction to be saying that the victims of this should be limiting how they behave and how they act. It's not realistic. What we should be doing is getting the perpetrators and stopping them.
When you mention that some of this stuff comes from abroad, that reminds us of one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest technical and political challenges here, which is there is no overarching organisation which can take control of this. And you'll get the critics of the big tech companies who say that's what they play up against. They know that actually little old UK, relative to Facebook sitting on an enormous fortune with lots of lawyers that they can deploy, it needs something much more international, multipolar.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why politicians are calling on internet companies to do more, because the internet companies are global. And so if they take a position, and there's a lot that they could do that would be quite small ads for them, just making it easier to report, collating reports. So I report somebody doing something that doesn't look okay to me. Maybe the same person has bothered you. If we can have it there so that suddenly the police are able to access a full list of this one account has done a whole... So this isn't just some guy in his bedroom who's sort of a bit drunkenly decided to be a bit rude. Hold on, this is somebody who's systematically doing this day in and day out. Sometimes I recognise people who send me abuse who've been doing it for years. So these people are obviously serial offenders. If you look at the brilliant organisation End Online Misogyny, one of the first things they usually say to me when I send them particularly nasty abuse I've received is, oh yeah, we recognise this guy.
Right.
So there are serial perpetrators out there, and I think, yes, the internet companies can help collate that. And then I also think, that the government is being a little bit cheeky here, saying, come on, companies, sort this out, when actually they should be supporting the police as well.
Well, that may be true, but as you tell it, the sheer evidential weight required to secure a conviction in the courts would be considerable, and considerable too would be the cost of it. So perhaps not unreasonably, the Home Affairs Select Committee is saying, look, and the analogy they make is with football matches, where the clubs have to pay for the policing, not the taxpayer. You want to put the match on, you pay for it. And that seems to be the idea. The big tech companies should be paying for the investigative work and the regulatory work too.
Well, that's true, but on the other hand, it is simply the case that everybody is online. I don't think that we can say, right, because the companies ought to pay for it, the police will stop until that gets done. I think we know that something needs to change, and I think that we have, if you're threatened in the street, we don't go, well, whose shop were you outside and who owns that? We go, right, let's challenge this and let's start dealing with it now. There is a lot more the police could be doing. And one thing the police could be doing, actually, is having a unit that specifically does this. Because the first time you try to track someone down on YouTube, it will take you a month because you've got no idea what you're doing. And, and neither of us are in our sort of late teens and early 20s, which we might know how to do these things. But the second time you do it, it takes 5 minutes because you've understood the process and you know who to contact and what form to fill in, and it's much, much easier. So if they can centralise it, we're actually going to save police work and make it easier to do that. And I also think that if we did have a sort of regular sort of treadmill of cases being brought, a system in process, we would see people being punished for this, you know, given short prison terms, community service orders. I'm not suggesting we need to open 6 new jails. I think if we saw that, we'd see a lot more of the low-level perpetrators going, hold on a minute, I don't want to be caught in that. And I think we might see a real easing off of what goes on, yeah.
Kate Smurthwaite, got to leave it there. Thanks very much for your time. Thanks a lot.